The line slackened again. Rosin cautiously, lowering the oar into the water, steered the boat forward. Fyodor slowly, without pulling on the line. Pushed by the waves, the boat approached the pike invisible in the water. He already showed a red signal rag, tied not far from the hook. People fixed their eyes on the water, but the waves prevented them from seeing anything. Rosin once again lowered the oar. Fyodor picked up the slack, and the monster's head appeared at the side. Rosin froze with amazement. Judging by this head, the pike is not less than 2 meters. Fyodor clutched the fishing line tighter and pointed at the gun with his eyes. Rosin, holding his breath, put down the paddle and reached for the gun. The oar slipped off the side, banged on the bottom. The pike rushed into the depths. The boat was torn, and in a second both were floundering in almost icy water. Their clothes were pulling them to the bottom. The waves were lapping at them, preventing them from breathing. The overturned boat flashed once, flashed another and disappeared into the waves. The pike must have dragged it aside. "Will you swim back?" shouted Fyodor. "Swim, swim," replied Rosin, getting rid of his heavy boots. The shore appeared and then disappeared in the waves. The wind was blowing towards it. The water came into his mouth and nose, whipped at his eyes. But the shore did not seem to be getting any closer. The cold made my body stiffen. At any moment a cramp could bring down his legs. And then that would be it. Rosin looked back. Fedor's head flashed among the waves. The cold water and the pressure of the waves were quickly draining his strength. Trying to take a break, Rosin rolled over onto his back, but a wave immediately slammed into him, forcing him to take a drink of water. Rosin looked back, green rippling water behind him. Fedor was gone. Could it be? It can't be. And the waves immediately became angrier. Fedor, Fedor. In response, only the noise of dark green storms, arms and legs like strangers, about to fail. If it's death, something special must happen. And here the boat just overturned. And because of that I may not be. To die so ridiculously, in some lake, hundreds of kilometers away from people. No. And he continued to swim with all his strength. And the wind was getting stronger, picking up foam from the waves and tearing it to shreds. Suddenly, among the howling wind and waves, Rosin heard a noise above his head, a swan above him. Pressed by the wind almost to the water itself, it flapped its wings noisily, staying in place. Even this strong bird couldn't stand. It flapped its wings wide open and gave itself over to the wind, and was immediately thrown far back. The morning wind moved the branches and immediately chased away the wisps of fog that hung on them. The sun had not yet risen, but the gulls were already golden and scarlet. Beyond the lake the sun rose from behind a strip of forest and splashed the trees, reeds, and grass. Rosin squeezed his fingers and felt sand in them. He opened his eyes. He was lying by the water. The gentle waves rolled up and licked his feet. He ran his hand over his face, smearing the mosquitoes that had gotten drunk. His hands and face were swollen with bites. He got to his feet and walked along the shore. Fyodor was lying on the sand with his arms spread out. On a gnarled bough above him sat a pair of crows. Fyodor's chest was slowly rising and falling alive. Rejoiced Rosin and swung at the birds. The crows reluctantly flew off. Fedor, Fedor. Fyodor stirred, raised himself on his knees and got to his feet with difficulty. He was shaking with cold. "How did you drop the oar, you bobblehead? Did I do it on purpose? Why did you cling to the line? You should have held it looser, that's all. All right, you don't wave your fists after a fight. I'm sorry about the gun, and the camera, and the negatives. All the negatives are gone, and the geese and the ermine. What's the matter now? We'll have to take off our clothes and dry off. Hang everything on the bushes, let it dry, it's so cold." Rosin pulled off his shirt. "The sun doesn't warm at all." Ducks quacked in the reeds. Here and there fish splashed, leaving diverging circles on the water. Matches must be dried. Fyodor went to his clothes. We'll move away from the fire. He approached the pants, hanging on the bush, turned out the pockets, empty. Do you have matches? No, I left some in my jacket. We got caught in a bad situation. No boat, no guns, no matches. The only thing left is the knife in its sheath on my belt. Everything sank. Good thing we didn't sink ourselves. The boat, it's wooden. It won't sink. We must find it, or you won't get out of here. How long do you have to see the urn? And how can you manage without all those gadgets? At least 2 weeks. And a couple of weeks for the return trip. A month, Withou estimated. A month is still possible. Even the water will hold longer. Squinting, Withou looked at the lake. There it is. Guess where the pike will take it? Unless the fishing line is torn. If so, we should go to the other shore. And that shore was slightly blue on the horizon. Well, did you blow out your shirts? I think they're dry. Get dressed. Let's go. There's no time to sit around now. Did you drown your boots too? I did. It's bad without boots. Better watch your feet. The tiger came right up to the lake. Cedars, firs, spruces, occasional birches. A swampland spread out to the sides. The tree limbs started from the ground. One could not see anything in the depths. A sullen dark green haze. They call this place the Wild Ermine for a reason, thought Rosen. Feather. Maybe no man has ever set foot here. Not that they haven't, but there are no traces. People rarely come here. Mosquitoes, if not waved away with branches, immediately covered my face and hands. A red squirrel was taking bald for a nest from a broken limb of a linden tree. A dark, white speckled cedar, barely noticing people, shrilled and scared the squirrel away. 2 chipmunks rose in columns on a dry deadwood, and a third one perched on a briar bush. All of them were reddish-gray, all with 5 black-brown stripes on their backs. How many chipmunks are there? Said Rosen. Good. After all, this is one of the main food of the sable. The green of young pines merged with the lower branches of mature trees, forming a resilient green wall. Look, Withou. And there are 2 shadows from me. Rosen nodded at the green wall. It's the first time I've seen such a thing. What's the big deal? 2 suns, one in the sky, the other in the lake. That's the shadows. It's understandable. Still, it's interesting. 2 shadows, though, dog. Rosen clutched his finger, pricked by a bough as sharp as a broken bone. I told you to watch your feet. Otherwise, around shadows, Shibko. No, it's nothing, it'll pass. Withou sat down on a deadwood, bent down to take off his boots. A small lizard was basking beside him, exposing its face to the rays of the sun. The skin under its throat was rising and falling rapidly. Feather hastily stood up and, squinting at the lizard, stepped aside. What are you doing, Withou? Let's get away from this creeping thing. I can't stand them. Either snakes or these. They're not poisonous. They're all the same cold, crawling scum. Let's go farther away. We'll fix your shoes. Withou took off his new shoes and cut off the shins. For some reason Rosen, only here, truly realized the seriousness of their situation. Suddenly, because of these shoes, it became clear that this was not just an adventure, but something much more serious. Feather cut the shins at the seams. Come, put your feet up. Rosen stepped on pieces of leather. Withou cleverly cut holes in the edges, pulled through them a strap cut from the same shins and, bending up the edges of the leather, tied the straps under the feet. My feet were like in short leather sacks. Thank you, Feather. But is it possible to walk in such slippers? Yes. When we pass this swamp, the skin on our feet will be more comfortable than any shoes. Like coral beads, wintered cranberries are scattered on the moss. Rosen sat down near the berries. Don't hurry, Withou, until we're properly fed. We won't leave here. Withou knelt down too. Little by little, they both crawled out, cleared almost half the swamp of berries. Doo-doo-doo-doo, a big bearded grouse clapped its wings on the takeoff. It was feeding nearby, and we didn't even notice it. Withou looked at the bird. Let's go. You won't get enough of this berry. You'll only get a taste for it. Behind the swamp there's a thicket again. Look, Feather. What flowers. In a low place, by a brook flowing into the lake, there were surprisingly large forget-me-nots. Look carefully into the lake, into the reeds. I wouldn't miss the boat, said Feodor. In the small woods, near the brook, birds were singing. Bluethroat, rattlesnake thrush, northern warbler. Rosin recognized the voices. Every now and then a grouse flew up from the ground, from a spruce tree, and landed here. On the first tree he came across. That's a lot of meat, said Rosin, and they let them come very close. He threw a splinter of twig with force. The grouse flew up, and the stick hit the spruce pines. How's your leg? Something's gnawing at my back. It's bruised. I guess we got into trouble. Why did I have to talk you out of it? We should have gone that way. The water will subside as long as my leg holds. Feodor moved a little, and his face turned white as paper. What's the matter with you? Shall we turn around? Shut up, Feodor answered calmly. And with his hands, he squeezed the dry grass of the bedding until his fingers were white. He needs urgent medical attention. What shall we do? Rosin thought. Wait for them to realize and come to the rescue. But after all, it is at least 2 months. And what if gangrene starts? Feather's body relaxed. His fingers released the grass. His head fell to the side. Bring, Paria, a drink. Rosin pushed away the fir tree that covered the entrance, climbed out of the hut, and looked around confusedly. And what to bring in? Not even a hat. Roll a piece of birch bark, suggested Feodor. Rosin peeled off a piece of birch bark, rolled it into a cone, and to keep it from unrolling, pinched it with a split stick and brought water. Let's see what's wrong with your leg, Rosin suggested. Feodor nodded slightly. The leg was blue and swollen. Rosin carefully removed the bow, wiped the abrasions gently with a wet flap from his t-shirt, applied fresh sphagnum moss. Now wrap a thicker birch bark around it, Feodor asked. Then you can cover it with sticks. Feodor drank, put the birch bark ladle against the dark green wall of the hut. Rosin wrapped his leg with birch bark and tightened it again. I'll sleep a little. It seemed to feel better. Just be careful not to move your leg. It's not plaster. Rosin cut a lush mossy bump and put it under Fyodor's head. And there the tiger lived its usual life. Old spruces swayed their tops. Young leaves of aspens fluttered. A striped chipmunk ran through last year's needles and snuck into the clutches of a small fir tree. Ants bustled along their paths. Grouse chirped with a thin whistle. At a small hill near the burrow 5 quick, sharp-faced foxes were fiddling. A red ball was spinning in front of the hole, and it was not clear whose head, whose tail, whose legs. In the turmoil, someone seriously put his teeth into action. Someone snapped, grabbed an innocent neighbor. At another, the ball scattered all apart, and everyone gritted his teeth. Suddenly the smallest one was frightened to the hole, and all after him. Tails and paws flashed, and there were no foxes, but the alarm was false. The foxes crawled out, and each one, without looking at the others, went about his business. One, yawning sweetly, squinted at the sun. Another curled up, and the third, tilting his pointy-eared head to the side, watched the buzzing bumblebee with curiosity. The fourth, apparently hungry more than the others, tried unsuccessfully to gnaw an old, abandoned bone. The little fox, who was sitting aside, jumped up and looked into the bushes with his ears perked up. Everyone, as if on cue, also raised their heads. Some of them wagged their tails, either happily or guiltily. Everyone jumped and squealed. A fox came out of the bushes. In its teeth was a heavy, metal-colored grouse. She put it down, and immediately the teeth of the foxes clung to it. Suddenly there was a sharp whistle. The fox went into the bushes, the foxes into the hole, and Rosin ran up to the abandoned grouse. "You're not busy," Feodor said later. "You've got some kind of a game he stole from foxes." he took from the birds. If a pair of them had come, they would have torn your eyes out. Shall we eat it raw? Rosin was holding a cleanly plucked grouse. We'll have to eat it raw. Isn't it good? Hunger changes tastes. Fyodor began to chew the raw meat lazily. We'll have to go fishing ourselves. There are plenty of redfish here. In the morning, lying on his back, Fyodor showed Rosin how to weave a rope. And here you bend the rod like this. Do you understand? I see. I used to weave baskets myself when I was a boy. It's almost the same. Rosin sat for a long time among the pile of twigs, weaving them into the top. Finally, he put the knife into the scabbard, put the top on his back and went to the lake. Along the shore there was a dark grey strip of dead mosquitoes, or some insects similar to them. In some places this strip is 4 or 5 meters wide. Not only crucifers, but whales can feed here, thought Rosin, thinking where to put the spit. A fallen pine tree was visible nearby. The trunk was above the water, the top was in the lake, and just where the reeds were diverging circles of large fish. With the top on his back, Rosin quietly stepped over the trunk. He reached the top, drowned the spit and turned back. At the very shore, in the mud, the fin of a big crucian carp stirred above the water. But the black thick back turned, the crucian carp could leave. Rosin's whole body plunged at him. Raising his face, dirty from the tina, quickly fumbled under himself, but there was no crucian carp. Rosin stood up, shook off the rags of tina, and under his feet, gurgle, and the frightened crucian carp, lying next to him, rushed away. Rosin followed him. There he is, snap. But there's nothing there, only mud. Why are you so glum, Fyodor? Is it your leg again? Rosin asked, wringing out his shirt. No, sir, it doesn't hurt much when you don't move. It's not very good. They'll be looking for you. They'll search the whole black continent and they won't find it. It's a lot of trouble for people. And we're over there, in the other direction. Wait, Fedor. Why will they look in the black continent? And the letter? There's no letter. Remember, there was a fire in one place. It was a pile of dried wood near the channel. And the letter, you know, was near her. Why didn't you tell me about it right away? Who knew it would happen like this? We'd have come back by the deadline. That's why we need the letter. So that's how it is. No one knows we're here. And there's nothing to hope for anyone's help. My leg will heal in 2 months at best. But you said that when the water goes down, we'll never get out of here. That's right. Even with healthy legs, you can't get out of here in that time. At least we'd have some food. We'd have lived till that spring. Rosin lowered the twisted, not fully wrung out shirt to the ground and sat down beside her. Business. Near the river, in the thickets of cherry blossoms, a red-necked nightingale was singing. No, we can't stay here. We must find a boat at any cost and go back. I'll put you in the Dolblenka. I'll get out somehow. Only if you get out alone, tell them there. Maybe they'll send an airplane. It's true, at that time, you couldn't leave this place with healthy legs. I wish we had at least some food. We would have lived till that spring. Rosin lowered the rolled up, not fully wrung out shirt to the ground and sat down beside her. Business. Near the river, in the thickets of cherry blossoms, a red-necked nightingale was singing. No, we can't stay here. We must find a boat at any cost and go back. I'll put you in the Dolblenka. I'll get out somehow. Only if you get out alone, tell them there. Maybe they'll send an airplane. Maybe it's true that I can get out alone. A helicopter will come and get him. But how can he be out here alone? It'll take me 2 weeks at best. What's he gonna do? He can't move, and there's nothing to eat. No, then he'll stay in this hut. No, Fedor, you can't stay alone. Fedor didn't answer. He understood better than Rosin what it meant to be alone. Well, oh yeah, your worries have come true, thought Rosin. We seem to have really fallen into an unenviable position. No one knows where we are. And we are hundreds of kilometers away from people, behind swamps, without guns, without clothes, and even without fire.